Good morning, everybody. I'm Ben Mannion, President of the Herefordshire and Worcestershire Chamber of Commerce and a Director of Hewett Recruitment. And I'm joined today by my fellow Director of Hewett, Laura Hewett.
Good morning, everybody.
So we're delighted to be sponsoring the Virtual Expo this week. Hope you're all having a great time. And we wanted to use this webinar to talk to you a little bit about skills in the future workforce and reflect on what we've seen in the last 12 months and what the challenges around our future workforce are.
And when we think about the subject of skills and workforce planning, we've actually presented several times on this subject in the last sort of 3 to 6 months. So we thought what might be best is, rather than us just present to you straight for half an hour, is to kind of pull together a bit of a best of reel to kind of pull out the key themes that we've been discussing. And actually you'll see on your screen now a list of all the topics that we're going to touch on, and how many minutes in each of those topics are. So if you're like me and you like to fast forward to the bit that you're interested in, you can do that. We've also got a page on our website, and the link to that should now be on the screen as well. So you can go there, there'll be lots of resources on there relating directly to this webinar, including the full-length videos if you want to see any more information.
Brilliant. So first up, recently Hewett Recruitment sponsored the Herefordshire and Worcestershire Chamber of Commerce Employment Survey. We used to do a salary survey with them on an annual basis, but over the last 12 months, salary hasn't really been a priority for many businesses and indeed individuals. So we did a broader employment survey, just looking at some of the challenges and issues that businesses have faced over the last 12 months. And what we've got now is a clip of Laura talking about the employment survey at the launch of this just back in February, and highlighting some of the key items that were raised.
I think a lot of us have become experts, it sounds like Dale in particular, with virtual and remote recruitment and onboarding over this past year, but a lot of companies haven't touched it at all, but might be just starting now to think about how to approach that. So I thought it'd be worth just kind of touching on that. So when companies initially moved into remote interviewing last year, what we saw was a real slowdown in decision making, both from candidates and also from our clients. I think the difficulty there was driven by just a lack of information. When we think back to the good old days of face-to-face interviews, face-to-face anything for that matter, you know, there's so many kind of non-verbal cues that you use, and a lot of gut feel, let's be honest. But suddenly with video interviewing, you know, a lot of those cues are removed. I actually had to go on a site visit yesterday for a client, and I was just really excited. I've had lots of meetings with that client on video this year regularly, but it was just amazing actually the richness of the conversation that you have when you're sat in a room with someone, and from a relationship building perspective as well. It really did strike me. And I think in this remote world where we're having to do these interviews in that way, I think we have to be much more structured. We have to be more carefully planned in terms of our questions, just to make sure that a decision can be made, because it's kind of difficult to get that instant connection that you might get with somebody face to face in a room. But as time goes on, you know, companies have been embracing new processes for remote interviewing and onboarding. And in many cases, we've seen an improvement in efficiency of the recruitment process. So, you know, you're not having to wait for a candidate to book a day off work or half a day off work to attend an interview. They can attend in their lunch break or at the beginning or end of the day. And we've also seen a lot of creativity as well, you know, in terms of companies creating videos about what it's like to work somewhere, and sharing that on social media much more. And also I have to say that what companies tend to do is kind of do the first stage and maybe second stage as a video, and then they're still doing kind of a final stage rubber stamp, just like a socially distanced meeting in the office, because, you know, just so both parties can be 100% confident that it's the right decision before they kind of sign on the line. And I know, you know, there are risks around that, but I think if it can be done in a sensible way, then it does really help make sure everyone's happy. Okay, so I think we're all looking forward to the pandemic coming to an end and restrictions being lifted. But probably thinking about the recruitment process, we won't just automatically bounce straight back to the traditional recruitment process that we were all used to before the pandemic. And hopefully what we'll do is take the best of both worlds. So take our learnings from what we've been having to do during lockdown, which has actually made the processes a bit more efficient, and we'll create the ultimate recruitment process.
Yeah, and of course, COVID isn't the only thing that's been going on in the world in the last 12 months. Brexit has been lurking and does have obvious consequences for the UK labour market, particularly when we look at the movement of labour in and out of the country, even if we haven't actually seen the full impact of that yet.
And actually, Ben, you spoke back in February, didn't you, on a Brexit expert panel, talking specifically about what Brexit might mean for skills. So we've actually got a clip of that to share here now.
I think I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about what we're actually seeing, because we're now into February. What have we actually seen since January the 1st, and actually what were we seeing pre-December the 31st? The really interesting bit around all of that is COVID, and I'm sorry to bring that up this morning, but since March last year, international travel has been either lawfully restricted, or people themselves were less inclined to travel, whether it was because they were fearful of catching something or transmitting something. So what we're actually seeing at the moment is it's difficult to tell necessarily what the difference is between the impact of COVID and the impact of Brexit in terms of people looking to come and live and work in the UK. I think what I can say anecdotally is that we had expected a bit of a surge in the quarter running up to Christmas of EU nationals looking to get in before that December the 31st deadline so they could apply for the pre-settled status. We didn't see that. The number of registrations we saw from non-UK workers was pretty flat. The other thing is that it's difficult to tell what the impact is on the labour market at the moment, because it's fair to say there is a huge upswing in the demand for blue-collar temporary workers in the UK. A lot of businesses are dealing still with pent-up demand from last year, from lockdowns, and furthermore, they are reticent about employing people on a permanent basis to deal with current peaks in demand, and so they're very much using the temporary pool of workers that we have. At the moment, you've got a lot of people either furloughed or unfortunately have been made redundant from the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors, which remain shut down. And so a lot of those people we're seeing are moving into this blue-collar sector and filling a lot of the gaps in terms of the demand there. What will be interesting, and I think what will be particularly telling later this year, is as the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors open back up and a lot of people move back into what would have been their kind of chosen sectors of work, is where does that really leave us in terms of filling this huge blue-collar demand that we're seeing? Because what we're going to find then is the real tightening of the supply in that labour market, because we haven't got now that flow of people coming in from outside of the UK.
And when I reflect on that clip, actually, I think it's fair to say that we're still in that situation where we're waiting to see how things pan out. As we emerge from the pandemic, as restrictions ease, as support such as the furlough scheme unwinds over the coming months, it's only really then that we're going to see what the true impact of Brexit is on the labour market.
Yeah, and when we think about how we can understand what's really going on here and now, one of the most powerful tools that local business communities have available to them is, of course, the quarterly economic survey done by the Chamber. No doubt all Chamber members watching will have been chased up to complete that at one point or another. And we know that certainly it's something that Herefordshire and Worcestershire really places great stock in.
Absolutely, and the QES really is that vital piece of local market intelligence that lots of businesses value. And actually at the back end of 2020, Laura and I were asked to present our thoughts on the most recent QES at that time, which had actually focused on employment issues that had arisen from COVID. So we've got a clip now of Laura talking about the advent of flexible working that came about due to COVID and the kind of pros and cons of that.
But just about what people are talking about now, so flexible working, just to kind of add a few comments to that from our perspective. If anyone has seen us speak in the last couple of years, Flexible working is something that, you know, you can't stop us talking about. We're always on about it in terms of being able to attract and retain talent within your business. Obviously, the flexible word would suggest there's some choice in the matter, and it was rather thrust upon us, wasn't it, back in March when we simply ran out of the office with our laptop and mobile phone, and that was it. But I think now, you know, every viable business pretty much has had to find a way of doing flexible and remote working. And so I don't think that's going anywhere, because businesses have invested a lot into that and seen the benefits and increase in productivity. So what we're hearing from businesses now, the conversation's kind of changed when we're talking about flexible working, whereas initially it was like, how do we do this? You know, what kit do you need? Whereas now it's what policies do we need in place? Flexible working policies, remote working policies, performance management guidelines are changing quite a lot. So, you know, measuring outputs much more clearly rather than inputs, or, you know, getting rid of presenteeism. And just being really clear with people what they need to achieve while they're working from home. And then other things like, you know, risk assessments, health and safety for your workplace at home. Rather, you know, not just sitting with that laptop that you took home back in March, kind of getting set up with a proper computer and a proper desk phone, and just stuff like that, if it's going to be more of a permanent measure. So that's really interesting to start seeing those conversations changing, and that's really positive. And yes, as we say, from a recruitment perspective, if you've got remote working, you can access such a broader pool of people. It really opens up doors there. But obviously there are so many challenges as well with remote working, and mental health and physical health. It leads nicely on to that point, which, you know, it's been great because in the last couple of years, businesses have been talking, you know, a lot of these sort of chamber seminars have been on kind of wellbeing in the workplace, and Sharon and I are on the board of Worcestershire Works Well. And, you know, it's been really on the radar, which is good, because suddenly with lockdown and remote working, we're hit with so many more issues from employees in terms of whether they're facing anxiety due to you know, the virus itself, or returning to work, or whether it's anxiety about insecurity of their job, or isolation because of not being able to kind of get into the office and be with the people that they're normally with. So there's so many different things. It's really important for companies, and we're hearing a lot about it now, that they're really trying to put some stuff in place to be able to support. I think almost it was easier in the depths of lockdown to kind of keep that sense of team and engagement and togetherness when everyone was at home and working, because it was really essential. Whereas now lots of people are back in the office and it's busy again. And thankfully, I think those regular Zoom quizzes that we were all the obligatory meetings, you know, they've kind of phased out now, and those, you know, regular team meetings. So I think it's important to keep that at the top of your mind as to how you keep people feeling part of the team, because I think there might be a risk that some companies might start losing people if they're imposing home working on employees. We are hearing, I mean, from our own business, we try to get a lot of our team working from home more often, because they're set up to do it, but with a lot of resistance. If we're asking them to do it more than one day a week, they're kind of, we're people, we need to be around other people. So we've ended up converting a storeroom into an office to be able to just accommodate people safely. It's good that we haven't had to push it, but you know, if businesses are, I think they need to be aware that actually it could be enough to make a good person leave to want to be in an office with other people.
So that whole piece around flexible working is very much a hot topic at the moment, and will continue to be so for many months to come, I'm sure. What we believe will happen as restrictions start to ease is that there'll be kind of a very much a blended approach used by businesses, so using offices, home working, and also co-working spaces, as companies maybe don't want to continue their commitment to large, expensive office buildings. And this allows us to interact with colleagues and clients seamlessly wherever they may be.
So, for example, Laura and I are now in our respective home offices, recording this for you, working away. But as if by magic, I'm now in the kiln. So this is an amazing co-working space in Worcester City Centre that we've been using since the end of last year. We reviewed our commercial footprint like a lot of businesses did in response to the pandemic. And when we found that our consultants were working really productively from home, we thought we didn't necessarily need the big office in Worcester that we'd just taken on, so decided to scale that back and use this space. So it's great because we're able to offer our consultants an opportunity to work collaboratively, get together for a cup of tea and a natter in a safe, COVID-secure environment, but also still giving them the flexibility to work from home whenever they need.
That's a cool move there, Ben. Nice teleportation there. Obviously, a lot of the last 12 months has been about really dealing with the here and now, dealing with short-term issues, COVID, the impact of Brexit. But it's really important that we don't lose sight as businesses of the long-term priorities around skills, supporting young people with careers guidance, and getting businesses and education working together to make sure that we have the skills that are needed for the future.
Absolutely, and that's that whole future skills agenda is something that Hewett Recruitment's been involved in the local area for many years. Currently, I chair the Future Skills Board for the Local Enterprise Partnership, which kind of oversees the careers guidance going on around the county in schools and colleges. And Laura actually sits on the advisory panel for NMITE, which is the really cool project-led engineering university that's being established just over the border in Herefordshire. So it's great that we've got all of that work going on. And actually earlier this year, I was invited to speak at that conference and just say a few words about the importance of businesses and schools working together on this agenda. And our founder, Louise Hewett, also said a few words about a new initiative that she's been helping get off the ground.
And now we're moving on to employer excellence, really looking at recruitment and redundancy. And with me, I've got Ben Mannion. And Ben, you're chair of the Future Skills Board within the LEP. That role and how you see the sort of employers playing their role in the parts that we've talked about, education, we've talked about apprentices. How do you see employers playing their role around the future of jobs?
Yeah, so I think the role that employers have got to play is incredibly valuable. I think in Worcestershire we tend to hear a lot from our client base about there not necessarily being the right talent or skills available to help those businesses grow. So by getting businesses involved with schools, with colleges, to help them develop their career guidance and actually getting so far as to get involved with how the curriculum is formed, it means that the businesses can be confident, I should say, that there is the right talent and skills coming out of those educational establishments so that those businesses can utilise those skills and that talent in the future. The flip side of it as well is obviously it benefits all the young people as well, because they get an opportunity to really understand all the different opportunities there are out there for them and how to access them. So whether it be A-levels and degrees or apprenticeships or traineeships or all the different kind of routes you've got, they know everything that there is to know. And hopefully we get to a point where all the schools and colleges are producing the talent that the businesses in the county need.
And that's great, Ben, in terms of seeing how employers can be engaged. And earlier today I was talking to Louise about our Employments and Excellence Charter, and here's the clip. So Louise, why did we bring this charter together to support employers?
Well, we started creating it last year, didn't we? When we had the consultations with local employers across Worcestershire, the LEP initiated, and then Hewett's, we worked with you sort of with some seminars, etc. And the main findings we had from those was to do with around skill shortages, and people development. And those are still very important, but we were really then looking to extend that to something to support business in a wider sense, to bring in important issues like inclusion and diversity, flexible working, creating the workforce of tomorrow, etc. And really, I think the LEP's main aim through this process is to encourage best practice and, put something together that's meaningful, that sort of incorporates all the other great schemes that are already working in the county, and bring and also look at some of the national schemes and learn from those as well.
Okay, and actually at that same LEP conference, Ben, you spoke as well, didn't you? Not just about future skills, but also about the importance of retraining our existing workforce. So let's take a look at that now.
What support's out there for those people who have been made redundant, both the employers at that time, but also the individuals?
Yeah, so as with a lot of things that have come about in the last 6 months, there's lots of different schemes that have come up. There's also lots of different ways that businesses are reacting as well. So some of the businesses that we work with, particularly in the kind of advanced manufacturing sector, they've looked at how they can redeploy employees, second them almost to different parts of the business to make sure that they keep that talent in-house and they don't lose it completely. So there's lots of clever ways that businesses are reacting in that sense. Obviously that doesn't work for every employee, it doesn't work for every type of role, and so a lot of the work that's being done at the moment, and it ties in actually to a certain extent with what the future skills piece is all about, is about upskilling and retraining. So I'd urge anybody that is impacted by this to reach out to people, you know, like the Chamber, like the LEP, and understand what the different options are that are out there, because really that's the thrust now. It's about making sure that people have got the skills necessary to get back into work. Quite often it's digital skills, but there's lots of other opportunities out there for them as well.
So one of the things you spoke a lot about in that clip, Ben, was about how businesses can support the skills agenda for young people. So do you want to give a few examples of what that might look like specifically?
Absolutely, and I think the main thing here is just to say it doesn't have to be a big burden. Herefordshire and Worcestershire, and in fact the West Midlands as a region, there's so many SMEs that have lots to offer, but maybe think that they've got to take on a big cohort of work experience or 10, 15, 20 apprenticeships a year. Actually, it can be something really simple, a CV writing class, mock interviews, doing an assembly talking about the sector in which your business operates. And the beauty of this virtual world that we now live in is that you don't really need to leave your home or your office to actually do it. So there's no need to spend half a day travelling to and from somewhere. It's become a much more efficient way to do things, but can still have such a huge impact on young people and the careers guidance that they receive.
Yeah, okay, that's really valid. So as long as we have lots of businesses doing something small, the sum of that is really great. And actually at Hewett's we do that, don't we? All of our consultants take part in mock interviews for students, we attend careers fairs, and actually it's been a lot easier this last year with everything being online, as you say, because it just takes up so much less time, but you still get to add that value to students. And I know you did a video for National Careers Week recently, didn't you, just giving your top 10 tips for students about how to apply for jobs. So we'll just have a quick look at that now, just to see how easy it was for you.
Yeah, research is probably one of my biggest bugbears, and I think Emma's probably going to share this with me as somebody who does a lot of recruitment for the business she works for. There's two parts to it, really. One is the research that you do for yourself, and that's basically making sure that if you're going to put in a job application for a specific type of role or a specific company, that you basically understand what you're letting yourself in for. And you'll never really truly know that until you go into a job or into a company. And that's why, you know, you can forgive yourself if maybe the odd mistake is made, and it is okay to turn around and think this isn't for me. You can move on to something different. But at least by doing that research, you're giving yourself the best chance of getting it right. Now,
okay, so hopefully that's given everybody a bit of a flavour as to what's been going on in the labour market locally, both challenges and opportunities that present themselves.
Yeah, and obviously, as Laura said at the start of our webinar, all of the information, the full video clips and links to things like the employment survey can be found on our website on the link that should be showing on your screen right now. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. We hope you've enjoyed it and maybe learned something or taken away a practical tip that you can put into place. And hopefully see you again soon. She's been Laura Hewett.
And he's been Ben Mannion.
Bye.